3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode of the Anwar Pramanik's Early Night Show that I've been so excitedly looking forward to, primarily because it is me discussing my professional work life with someone who I started a lot of my mainstream professional work life with. And at the same time, this is someone who I wouldn't say I'm besties with or homies with or someone I hang out with very often, but whenever we talk, it feels like, we left off yesterday and there's always something that like we trade off a lot in our conversations. So that's something I've realized. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to season 2, episode 5 with my guest, Sanand Warrior. What's up, Sanand?
What's up, Mr. Pramanik? So the show is called the Early Night Show.
Anwar Pramanik's Early Night Show. Yeah.
So what's the story there? Why is it called the Early Night?
I wanted to do a late night show because I really like the late
Ah,
night show format. It's quiet. You're speaking to an audience that's staying up
right.
maybe, and it's very calm. But my CEO, my current CEO, he said, "Bro, late night show to sab le liye. You call it early night show." I said, "Perfect. Let's call it the early night show."
That's
Just
right.
a branding effort. So Sanand, tell us.
But,
Nobody knows you except for me who's watching. Maybe
right.
Adi or Hisham or Adnan will be watching this. They know you. But why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about who you are, what you do currently, professionally, and what your hobbies, interests. Like, sum up who you are in the next 5 minutes. All yours.
Right. So I run an advertising firm. I run a modern day advertising firm, which is digital first. It has creative and distribution or media or performance marketing capabilities that we call in the market. Basically, we create stuff and then we get it out to people and then get results on the back of it. So we're a modern day advertising firm built on the ability to gauge ROI in terms of what you do. So that's
Why
sort
don't you
of
introduce the name of the company?
oh yeah, we're called Virality. It's an organization I founded many years ago. Anway was briefly a part of it at the origin and somewhere, probably in the second wave, if I could call it.
Yeah.
And since he's been a good friend, well-wisher, and I've known you for what now, 10, 12 years? How long?
It's been a
12 years?
fuck ton. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
13 years.
More than that.
I
Yeah.
think 13 years. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, long time.
You've known me since my waltz with Himanshu in your 12th standard lobby. You remember during
A
farewell?
video is still left somewhere in my phone. I'm going to try and send it to you.
That video is. That's how long we've
Somewhere
known
there.
each other. Why
Yeah.
don't you tell us a little bit about what are the kind of, you don't have to tell us the clients, but what is Virality's philosophy when it comes to advertising? Like you told us it's digital first, focused on primarily on getting ROI on the spends. But why don't you tell us a little bit with regards to your brand philosophy and your business philosophy and the philosophy that you have for your employees at your workplace?
Right. That's a lot of philosophies to cover in one go, but I'll try. So, we're primarily a digital first agency, which means we're just new age, where we're built on platforms, we're built on the internet. We believe that there are brands and there are customers, and the internet is the world's biggest middleman. And we're an organization that operates on the internet to create solutions for brands who basically want to reach out to their customers. That's particularly, or that's sort of the thesis, if I can
That's
call it that.
fucking amazing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and in terms of organization, we're young. We're sort of predominantly filled with people who are self-starters, who sort of self-taught. Now we're sort of adding flavor from the industry. We're building into a proper. I'm I wouldn't call it wanting to be a network agency, but along the lines wanting to be a global creative come media house. That's sort of how I define us. And yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. 4 years, initial years with you, many years after.
Yeah.
Been a lot of ups and downs, and the last 1 year has been crazy. We just sort of touched upon that in terms of what we've gone through in the last 1 year. So yeah, that's
Maybe you want to just, for the audience who's joined in, maybe just give a quick recap of what the last 1 year has been for you. You don't have to get into the nitty gritties, but just like the thought process, how it's evolved.
yeah. Um, I think the last 1 year has been very special. Special is what I call, and then I just chuckled after that with regards to that adjective. But I think it's been a great year. A lot of learning personally, professionally. I think in March when all of this happened and things shut down, I think we were forced by nature to act and behave in a different way, and I was very curious to see how does that change the buying and selling mentality or the behavior. And it's been a very insightful last 1 year in terms of looking at the trends, in terms of what happens when humans are just forced to stay indoors. How do they basically adopt to new technology? How do they change the way they were doing things. And it's one of the key things about humans are we're so resistant, right, in terms of everything that we do. And when something like this comes along, and when nature forces you to behave a different way, it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating how we change as humans.
Yeah.
And it also shows the fact that we can adapt and survive.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is played out in the markets too, in terms of how people buy, sell things. And in the context of the last 1 year, it's been great. Just understanding, reacting, having to create or adapt to that environment for the success of your clients and the brands you manage has been fascinating. So yeah, the last 1 year, like I said, has been special for me.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like you said, we spoke before this podcast. I have a question for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Does virality have a certain, or let me take a back step. I like working with clients who I can connect on a philosophy level in terms of how we look at marketing, how we look at growth, how we look at customer engagement and giving value to customers. Yes, of course, I can sell to a brand who just wants uh, to, the brands come and say, I want max engagement. I'm like, are you creating content that gives engagement? I don't care. I want max engagement. So there are those customers, and then there are customers who, you sit with and you explain the Triple H philosophy of creating content and how you need to provide more value before you ask for anything. So do you have an outlook of, these are the only kind of clients I want to work with, or do you keep an open mind saying I will work with anyone and in the process even learn myself how to deal with such people?
I think it's impossible to find everyone in the world to agree with you, or find everyone who agrees with you. I think it's just not possible. So I think, and in marketing, often disagreements are good because it usually brings out growth, usually through innovation, because one party has to change, right? They can't be resistant, and in that something nice comes out. So it's impossible to always find people that you're going to agree with. But I think there are certain philosophies that we follow. I think people need to believe in what they want to achieve. I think that's the number one criteria that we sort of have. The clients and the brands that actually have an idea of what they want to do and how they're going to do it. And we come into basically, actually less so of how they do it, but at least knowing what they want, right? I think that's
Correct.
very important. And if someone is aware, self-aware as a brand to that extent, I think then our job becomes easier, and it's so much more easier to work with any agency for that matter.
Correct.
And so that's something that we sort of focus on. And yeah, I mean, you want to work with nice people as much as possible. You don't want douchebags on the other end, which is quite common in our line of work. And I'm
Correct.
sure they would say the other way about agencies too.
Correct.
But we want nice people as much as possible. It's just so much more easier to deal with. And if they know what they want on top of that, then I think it just becomes so much more easier to work together and achieve those results. Because in marketing, it's not easy. It is time bound, every result. So it's almost like a mini pact, or a mini marriage, where you're going
Yeah.
to have to live with someone for a while, right, as a
Yeah.
client and agency. So you got to see what works for that partnership. And yeah, uh, it's a touch and go. You won't always know what you're walking into, so you just have to be ready for it, and a lot of sacrifices. Like they say about marriages, right? A lot of
Yeah.
sacrifices in a client agency relationship. So a lot of that, yeah.
I really like how you put this one phrase, that disagreements are good because it causes either one of the parties to evolve and grow. I really like how you put that. I think that that is a philosophy that I keep for life also. Like I always tell my friends, colleagues, anyone that the reason I'm arguing with you is because I fucking want you to see how we can both grow. Right. And most people, I
Right.
tell them, I will not argue with you if I don't want you to grow or if I don't want me to grow. I will just stay away. But if I'm taking the time, and it's not like an argument where I go anal and like, fuck you, dude. It's more like, can you see what's happening? Can you see this is not happening? So I really like how you've put that. Anyways, coming back to the advertising space, without taking the client's name, because you've told me, and I'm sure you have an NDA, you've worked with a Scandinavian tech brand, correct?
Right.
Um, would you say that it's easier to work with brands in the West or brands in India?
um, I think so. It's a layered question. I don't think there's a blanket
You,
answer.
you can
Also,
break it
partly because
down.
I don't
You can break it down.
see, if you are going beyond the borders of your country to engage in business, you have to be evolved slightly, right? It's a fact, right? You have to be firstly open to leaving your culture and your way of doing things behind, and going out and looking at a foreign market or a alien market and being mentally prepared to go into it and engage with somebody who does not share the same values and beliefs that you have. So if you are willing to do that, you have to be slightly evolved. And as a result of which, I think from my experiences, it just could be based on the kind of people that I've dealt with. But in this job and probably in my previous job, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of foreign clients and brands. And it could be a result of me meeting people who have come forward to wanting to work with me or my organization in India, or it could be vice versa, where I've sort of stepped out and gone. And it's been different experiences both times. Uh, I generally find it easier to do business with somebody who is coming from a foreign land into India, because I think they're coming with that open-minded minded
Got it.
approach.
Got
So
it.
they're willing to work with you.
Yeah.
When I was reaching out and trying to work with foreign brands or foreign clients in other parts of the world, and not just the West, but also the East and Southeast, I think the experience has been slightly different. Where I think I've had to over communicate and make that extra effort, because I'm the one going into their natural environment,
Habitat.
and I'm
Yeah.
trying to work with and I'm trying to work with them, right? So there's more change and resistance that comes my way, and I have to adapt to it.
Correct.
So that's just been the case. And then there's a third one, right, which is in the middle, which is working with people in India.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a mixed bag of all kinds of experiences. So I can't put a blanket to it and say this is how this is good and this is not. I think I've met some wonderful people both outside this country and the ones here,
Yeah.
and at professional capacity only. And it's been fantastic. Like in terms of like good people are always good, regardless of where they're coming from. And on the other hand, people who are confused, who don't know what they want, who think an agency is like a magic pill that you sign on and then your fortunes are changing next day. With those people, it's hard. Whether they're here, whether they're somewhere else, whether they're on the moon, it's always going to be hard.
Correct.
So that's just my take on that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I always tell people whenever we do a client pitch, right? Like one skill set that I've developed in the last 1+ year of working at Changing Tree is doing the client pitch and creating the client pitch. I'm not sure if you remember when I came once to your organization, your team was working on another pitch, and I just put in 2 cents because I'm like, this is what I'm doing at my current organization as well. And one of those things that I realized, so I've mainly pitched uh, to brands in Bombay, a lot to brands in Bombay, like big boys in Bombay, right? Like annual, as of 2017 turnover, like 5,000 crore plus kind of businesses, right? Personally, I have realized it's the big boys who are not under the impression that marketing is a magic pill which will turn over their sales the next day. But it's the small
Because they've been doing it
boys.
for so long.
Correct, because they've been doing it for so long and they know exactly what it is that I'm getting into, versus these small boys who have probably just started a business in the last 3 years, maybe got some family funding or some seed capital. They're the ones who usually have these expectations that I start doing social media marketing and tomorrow I have 1 million followers. That's what I've realized. What are your thoughts on the same?
Yeah, it's so true. If you ask me personally, I don't think the agency model works for small and medium scale organizations. Actually, more so for small. Medium, I think still they'll get by. But I genuinely feel agency model does not work for a small organization, because small organizations are trying to stay alive. They're trying to make money month on month, right? They're trying to meet their expenses, the bills. If they were really comfortable and they were scaling through, they wouldn't be a small organization, and then they would be large. And by the function of having a lot of people, you need to have processes in place. You need to be evolved. In a small organization, it might just be a founder, and then he might have one member marketing team, right?
Yeah.
And they'll be tagging with each other to get things
One
bring
digital
things to
guy who
life.
knows how to run ads in this
Exactly,
company.
and he is always the most annoying, because he's one digital guy and he has no one to tag with, so he's not growing fast enough. And
Yeah.
and as a result, you're in 2020 pitching to him, and he's like 2017. This is how it works.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Do you make
So
WordPress websites?
yeah, right. So the conversations at that level, and no disrespect to any of them, but I feel if you're small and if you're a small organization, cash is oxygen. So you really want cash, and there's not enough cash, so you're not breathing, right? You're not breathing properly, and as a result, you're just trying to stay alive. And it's a chaotic environment for an organization or an agency to go in and accelerate, because we need the basics in place. Because I always tell all our clients that we're catalysts, right?
Yeah.
Agencies are catalysts who can come in and speed up the process, because we're organized. Our skills are go deeper, not wider. So
We
we
know
are
how to
more.
organize creativity and get results from it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So we know how to take we know how to look at it from a systemized format,
Yep.
which a lot of brands wouldn't, because that's not their forte. They are in the business of doing whatever they do, and as a result of which, uh, our association will be so much more stronger if, as a brand or a client, they are so much more organized at their end.
Correct.
And as a result of which, yeah, in a small organization, it's hard to ask for those kind of demands, because they are trying to stay alive. So you will
Yep.
not have a evolved marketing team and a process and understanding of budgets and division between brand and sales ROI.
Yeah.
So all of those evolved concepts don't come in, and as a result, it's very difficult to work with them. I've been there. We started out that way, and
We
then
started.
gradually made the evolution. So I know both sides of the coin, and I think it's a delight to work with large organizations who have a large ambition and a vision, and people who know how to get there.
Yeah.
I always say, right, the best of the best organizations are the ones who know what to do with an agency, and
Yes.
don't call an agency in and say, hey, do you know how to get this done?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the my take, like in terms of what I've seen and what I feel.
That makes a lot of sense. An agency is like a sword or like a gun. And if you have the prior skills, tactical skills of using a gun, you can use that gun that much better. Or if you know you
Right.
want to get better at using this gun, you will get that much better. But if your thought is like, why am I not fucking getting better at Call of Duty or Counter Strike because I have a gun in my hand, then you're forever going to be stuck being that kind of a person. So this brings me to another question, right? A question of ethics. According to me, I also very strongly believe that small cafes and small businesses, they don't really need an agency. They need an agency to
Right.
come in and give them maybe a 6 month strategy or like a 3 month, 3 month, 3 month, 3 month
Right.
strategy. You can track
Right.
growth like that, and we will give you consultation. But ideally, if if I was ever becoming an agency founder, or if I was ever an influencer in this industry, I would always recommend small brands to go and get freelancers, maybe a freelance designer and a writer, to come in and work for them, and get an agency to give the overarching, the ATL part of it, like use Facebook for this, use Instagram for this, do ORM like this, but let your internal team take care of everything. So that way, what happens
Right.
is your small company, it has the control over what they're creating. And I also believe that agencies should not take small clients for a ride, like make them spend money knowing I can't do anything for you. So
Right.
this comes back to that whole, remember I was telling you when I started this podcast that I'm having an ethics problem right now. Like I'm having an ethics problem in the sense that it started with Zamstars. I'm pretty sure you remember I was working for
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
agency called Zamstars, where I was handling their portfolio of hotel clients, and I was killing it. Right, I was really good at developing hospitality brands, and we were having this lunch, this gala lunch event, which they invited me for. And at the end of the event, I saw so much food being wasted. I went up to the buffet guys and I asked them, bro, do you guys at least get to eat that? He's like, no, we will have dal chawal in the kitchen. And I'm like, where does that go? He's like, it's gonna get wasted. So
Yeah.
since then, I've been asking myself, is that what I'm selling? Like, is this what I'm like selling at the end of the day? Am I happy doing this? Does this bring me any, like, of course, yeah, tomorrow Sheraton Whitefield is getting recognized by 10x more PR verticals. But from an ethics point of view, because I personally hate wasting food, because I'm pretty sure you remember there was a time I was broke, homeless, trying to figure out myself from a whole hippie point of view. And since then, I've kind of understood, food is important, can't waste food and shit. And at the same time, seeing certain agencies like I won't take any names, but there was an agency I worked with. They were really good at taking clients for a ride, in the sense they know they can't do shit for this client, but they will still take like the 35-40K a month retainer from this client and not get any footfalls or whatever it is, right? Like how we tried for Tob, right? Remember Tob in Infantry Road or Church Road, wherever we tried our best, but we couldn't get his expectations met. So as a business owner, Sanand, where do you draw a line with morals? Like, where do you draw a line between morals and business?
I can't speak for everybody, but I just think it's individual to, it's unique to everyone, right?
For
It,
you,
it,
I'm
it
asking
comes,
just for you.
oh, for me, I think I need to feel good at the end of the day. I need to be able to sleep, right?
Yes.
And I generally don't care if I have to make a, like, if I have to make a decision that I don't like, if I have to do something that I generally don't believe in, and it pays me $1 billion, but I can't sleep well for the rest of my life, I'll be in balance. I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, I know what you're
I think
saying.
yeah, it stems from what your personal values are, and for me, it's very important for me to not just make money, but how I make it, and how am I remembered, right, in the transaction. I don't think everyone. So you could work with the client. It could go well or it could go bad. I don't think the client's going to remember how much money he paid you. Or sometimes he would, and if it's an absolute waste,
Yeah.
and you rip somebody off, they would remember.
Yeah.
But otherwise, in general, if you work with someone, and given the duration that we spend time with someone, 4 months, 6 months, a year,
Yeah.
uh, you want to be remembered as someone who made a difference,
Yes.
and made a positive difference. And I think it's important for me personally, and I also think it's a good marketing or a brand strategy to have in place, to be obsessed about your customers, to the
Yes.
point where, even if things don't work out, they're like, hey, no hard feelings, things didn't work out, but thanks for all the help. Hopefully we can do something together in the future. That's the
Exactly.
kind of conversation that you want to have with everyone, even when things don't work. And it's kind of hard to do that if you are ripping them off knowingly, because at the end of the period, they're gonna know that, you're gonna know that, and then your reputation at stake. And I don't think you can sleep well after that.
Yeah.
The way I look at it. So for me, it's very important that ethical value, though, that those rules that we have is maintained. We internally preach like a 100% transparency policy. Like everyone should know everything, and there shouldn't be something that you have to hide from somebody, right? The client or
Correct.
internally.
Correct.
And that's something that we sort of preach. I sometimes joke the fact that we have all glasses. If you look at the background, it's all just glass everywhere. It's because we're 100% transparent.
Yeah.
We want everything to be seen, known, felt. So I sort of look at it that way. So it's not about the money; it's about how you feel at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's a blend between the millennial way of thinking, and probably how our generation before us felt, our folks and the
Correct.
others. And I feel that being born in the 90s, and living through that era, you sort of get the best of both, right? You somewhere or the other, the
Yeah.
values have crossed over.
I think us
So I've
90s
taken
kids are
that.
the best. Like we've got the best of both
Yeah,
worlds. Like we just got technology and we just like came out of, still
yeah.
drawing in color
Like,
books and stuff like that as kids.
I think for most technologies that came about and became a cultural thing post 90s, I think, except the pager and
Yeah.
maybe the first gen mobile phones in
Mobile
India in
phone.
the late
Yeah.
90s, I think everything else in my family went through me. I was the first one that basically got to experience it, spend hours on it, and figure it out, and then help family understand it. I was the chief technology officer of my family that way, the CTO. So I think that's helped immensely, because I was brought up in a very valued, uh, I don't know, in a very strong set of values with regards to how I act, behave, and treat other people.
Right.
It's not always been something that I've followed, but most times I try. So those inherent teachings are there, and I think the layer of the knowledge of technology just came about that. So I sort of have that foundation there, and I even business idea of business came much after that. So
Yeah.
the foundation was strong. So I believe that I've always sort of looked at it from the core, which is to do what's right. Right? There's that
Yeah.
saying, right? Doing the right thing is always the right thing. So
Correct. I know what you're
I'm
saying.
strongly behind that. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. And um, like I cannot tell you how strongly I connect with that because I personally don't believe that there's any need for modern day agencies to be like a old school business in terms of hiding
Right.
why like like what the salary is like even in my current organization there was a time in the beginning when things were a little old school but now it's not as much, right? And again, coming to the question of morals, like I absolutely love what you pinned down. So before I jump into my next question, to all the audience members who've joined in, a little bit of a small quick look at the past of like why I can absolutely vouch for what Sanand is saying and why I've got him on this podcast is when I was in college 17 when I was 17, Sanand I think was 22, 21, 22.
No, man. That I'm not 5 years older than you. I'm about 2 years older than you.
So you were like 19 when you joined CMS,
Yeah.
right?
I was 18 when I joined, but when you came along, I would have been 20.
You would have been 20. So Sanand was my senior in the college that I went to. But before that, he was my senior in school. Even
Yeah.
in college, he was in the management and business side. I was in the creative, the media side. I dropped out of college. I still haven't finished. You finished college, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
So Sanand finished college, and I remember
Even
that
though I didn't bother to go pick up my degree certificate for, I think, 2 years, 3 years after, I don't know. I finally said, "Fuck it, I'll go take it." Because they
Oh,
said
yeah.
if you don't take it now, we'll just
We
archive
won't,
it, and then
yeah, we
I
won't give it to you and shit, they said, right? Yeah.
no, 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 I got to pay for it. So I was like, screw that, I'm not paying for it again. As is, I paid so much for education. So I was like, okay, let me just get it and leave. So I went and picked it up. So yeah, I am a graduate.
So,
In fact, my first ever Instagram post actually was my degree certificate. And I was like, yo, I did it.
this is pre you were exposed to Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm guessing, that first post.
Yeah, pre everything, pre every learning about even pre the design bit that you taught me. Yeah. So yeah, it's pre everything. So
Cool. So then that makes it even better. So to people who have joined, I started my advertising career at a company called Pink Lemonade, but I started my actual I did my first job in Pink Lemonade, but I actually started my career with Sanand. How do I put it? Before Pink Lemonade, I was a freelance content writer in a bunch of news sites and news articles and like magazines and stuff like that. Freelance, right? After that, I realized I can make a living out of writing by doing something known as copywriting. This is 2012, 13, something 13,
oh,
13ish,
really?
right? Yeah, I think it was
I think
13.
it's after, man. I think it was 14 something. 14,
14.
15 is I thought when you talked about. But yeah, somewhere on that. Yeah.
Somewhere around that time, right? 13, 14,
Somewhere on
15. Yeah, you're right. You're right. 2012, 2013, I was working with Jai Kishan. You're right. So 14, 15 is
that. Right.
when I jumped into Pink Lemonade and did a copywriting stint for 6 months with another friend of mine called Adi, who me, Sanand, and Adi pretty much did a lot of shit together.
Rasam rice.
Rasam Rise, yeah. He was the second episode of this season. So three of us. How did it start? Yeah. So even Adi was my college mate. He was my classmate in college. That's how I met him. Adi and Sanand met each other through their love of football. They were in the college football team together, I think, right? And I remember what happened is Adi joined Pink Lemonade. He told me, bro, join this company. I joined this company, worked there for 6 months, but realized it's sitting in a room and writing shit I don't want to do. I don't want to write. It's a great place. Like, learned so much over there. In fact, my boss, who was my direct boss over there, I introduced you to Sanand, Arvind, and you guys had a collaboration in between as well, right? So great place, great people. Even Tina, who was my CEO of Pink Lemonade, I'm still in touch with. But I realized I want to do something of my own, something where I call the shots on what the vision should be. But doesn't mean to say I want to be the boss, but call the shots on what I want to do. That's when Sanand, while I was working at Pink Lemonade, I still remember we used to finish Pink Lemonade at 7. Sanand used to pick us up on his XUV. You still have that XUV?
I know. I sold it, but then funny enough, we just bought another one now.
Another
So
XUV.
yeah, the new one. So don't ask me. It's a strange chain of events. Sold one in 2019, and now 2020 or 2021 we have one again. So
Modern
all those things
upgrade.
in life. Yeah,
It's the Warrior family, automobile brand of the Warrior family.
it's actually not family now; it's company. So it's different. It's here. It's owned by Virality now. So it's almost like my dad sold his, but then I grew up, and when I had to buy one, I just
Dude,
bought one.
congratulations. So you fucking bought it yourself?
Yeah.
That is fucking neat. Respect, dude. That's fucking awesome. That's fucking awesome. That's fucking awesome. So that's fucking awesome, dude. That's really awesome. I still remember Sanand would pick us up from Pink Lemonade in that XUV, and that XUV used to be like our office because all the ideation brainstorming used to happen in that XUV. Then we would then we'd go to McDonald's, and then we would go somewhere work. I think somewhere we would go and work and then go to McDonald's and like wrap up for dinner. I still remember that. So that used to be our job. Like we used to have the two jobs, and with Sanand, I used to do graphic designing. If I'm not wrong, I started my graphic design in terms of how do you visualize art, how do you visualize a design for a brand, creating something for a brand using brand colors and stuff, which I very strongly use now and during my pitches and giving my team direction, right? What is color philosophy, font philosophy and stuff. All of that started with you, Sanand. And during that phase of working with Sanand, he introduced me to this person called Gary Vaynerchuk. This is 2016, before the whole Gary V thing where he blew up, right? This is when Gary was still like, he had just released Jab, 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 Right Hook, or he had just released Crush It, right? I think Crush It, that Crush It economy he had just released.
I think it was the second one,
Yeah, so
the
he had
fourth released
one. He had just released Crush It. He was doing his that Ask Gary V thing. That was his main thing at that point of time, and he still had black hair. So that is that is the Gary Vee I'm talking about, right? So Sanand taught me things like jab, 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 right hook. What is social media marketing? What is giving value to people? How do you create content on social media? He taught me all of that. So helping me understand that like Madman helped me understand that there's a thing called advertising. Sanand helped me understanding what is advertising today, digital marketing. This is 2016, guys. 2016, we were discussing these things where there are businesses today, that is agencies today, that have still not understood this concept, right? So that is how forward thinking we used to be at that point of time. I remember Sanand then founded a company called Proactus, which became heavily involved in developing the sports, especially the football industry in India. We did a football tournament with a bunch of schools in India where Sanand gave me the opportunity to design jerseys. I'm someone who didn't know anything about football, and he's like, "Bro, make my jerseys." I made those jerseys, and I think they came out quite nice, right?
Yeah,
So
they
we did
did.
that. We did that football stint, and then I decided to, I think, continue doing something else after that. I remember I took a break at that point of time. Mohit joined as your designer, and then after a lot of stint, Sanand calls me one day and he's like, "Bro, I'm starting a business. I'm starting an agency of my own. It's called Virality. I want you to join as designer." And I still remember this was in the back office room of Budokor office where you got all of us, Hisham, me, all of us were there in that room that day, and you asked us. So Sanand was like, "Pitch to me why you should work for me." And I still remember what I told Sanand. I'm like, "I know how to get people's attention and make designs that get people's attention." I still remember that statement. Um, and then we started building this concept called the attention economy and all after that, if you remember, right? So
Yeah.
Virality started. It was me, Sanand, and a friend. And I'm going to be completely brutally honest here. I don't care who people who
Yeah,
judge me, even if you judge me. We worked in Virality for 3 months. We did some great work. I think we did some great work for the amount of manpower we had. Three of us, right? We did, I think, 7 brands at that point of time we used to handle, and that's where I
yeah. I
learned
think it was
how.
four of us.
Four of us, right? You, me, Mohit, and one more person. Is it?
Pratik Jose.
Jose, correct. Jose was our content writer. Correct. I still remember this. We were in an Axis Bank co-working space first in Diamond District. Then we moved
Yeah.
to our own office in Indranagar, which was the virality hub for a while before you guys moved to that big office that you have now. And I remember this was at a time when I was very lost in terms of what I want to do, who I want to be, what is life. This is pre-spirituality Anvay, right? Pre-woke Anvay, I would say.
I think you were on the path, though. I
I
think you
was
were
on the
already on
path.
the path.
I was somewhere on the path, like getting involved, and I still remember, like, this is something I carried a lot of guilt with for a long time, and I still love the fact that Sanand didn't hold anything against me, hold no grudges against me. Is one fine morning I just stopped answering texts and I didn't show up to work after a day. Like, I didn't inform that I won't show up. I didn't say I won't show up. I just stopped showing up. And considering that there was no other designer at that point of time, the fact that you kept things together, I'm not and made it happen. And I think Gummy had joined at that point of time, right?
I think he was supposed to join, but he had a longer notice, so he was 1 month away.
One
Actually,
month, 1 month away.
yeah.
I still remember. I think you and Mohit might have done the designs at that point of time on the templates and shit that I may have created. So
Mohit was away for a week in Gujarat holidaying, so you know who handled the designs.
I
It
can
was me.
understand. Yeah, and I carried a lot of guilt with regards to that. I think I didn't reach out to you also for a long time. We didn't speak for a while. I carried a lot of guilt because I feel like I let someone down. I let myself down, of course, but I let Sanand down, someone who had given me an opportunity to do so much shit. Yeah, it might sound very PR what I'm saying right now, but I mean all of these things because when I ran away and I went into the wilderness and did my shit. One thing that I realized is if I don't take myself seriously professionally and grow and don't focus on my career, I can't give value to anyone nor myself. Right? Like I love the freedom of being able to go to a jungle any point of time, but even in the jungle, I'm like, fish fuck, I wish I had a nice blanket and toilet paper and good food. Right. So that's when I came back to the city and I'm like, I want to build my career, actually become good at my job and good at becoming a 9 to 5 person. So that's when that Zamstars gig came. I did that for a year, really became good at, showing up on time and not missing office and meeting deadlines. And then after that, Cuddle, I did Cuddle for 6 months, where it was a startup. Built that team from scratch. Got fired from there because the company shut down. Then moved to Changing Tree for the last 1.5 years, and where I got hired as a junior creative director, became the creative director 4 months in, and just recently again got promoted to creative director and account director. So this is not something I would have expected if you had asked me when I'd just run away from virality, if I have to put it. But I think the guilt of the fact that I let you down really drove me to build myself from an ethics point of view, from a morals point of view, in terms of how do you treat your employer and like becoming a manager at work. So thanks Sarant for giving me my kick, my start, being patient with me, and at the same time, apologies for what happened back then. I know you don't want to get into it, but I've always wanted to say this, and I'm glad I got a chance to do it right now.
Yeah, no worries. I think everyone goes through that journey, right? I think you discovered yourself at the end of it. I think that's more
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
And I think you came out stronger. And I think the fact that you're talking about it and acknowledging is a reflection of the fact that how far you come from there, and the fact that it had an impact in whatever ways. And I think for me it was simple, right? As a business owner, you just can't wait.
yeah,
Like if someone didn't show up to work, that's it. Like I was just in that zone of mind saying, now what's the alternative? What next? And the short term fix was for me to take those shoes and give a shot at design was hectic, you know. I still remember that first day I had to deliver 7 designs and I did 6. I couldn't do the 7th because I just couldn't. I didn't have the talent, to be honest. uh, and then the client calls up and says your agency's like not delivered, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but it'll come tomorrow. And I was able to quick turn around and do something tomorrow. So it was a great the next day rather. So it was a good experience for me too to do something that I hadn't done before, and then see how uncomfortable I was, but also given insight into something that happened. And to be honest, I think I always say if something bad's going to happen, it should happen at the earliest, you know, because
yeah,
then you have time after that to just fix and then move on. So I looked at it that way, and I think luckily so did the guys who were working. I think, and as a result, I think everyone just sort of pulled through and said, "Hey, we need to just get over this and go ahead." And we just sort of did that. So as a business, I was looking at it in that frame of mind.
yeah,
Personally, however, like I said, I knew you needed your space because the other thing was if whatever you were going through and if you didn't come and speak to me by yourself and if you weren't answering the call, it was because it was uncomfortable for you at that time for whatever reason, right? However you must have felt. And I think the best thing to do was to give you that space. And then I think you came back, you reached out once.
yeah,
Um, I was, I think, I think I just had a surgery. I was a little immobile for a while. I couldn't
yeah,
move around, and I think we had a chance to meet. I didn't take that effort because I was like, "Fuck it, my leg's not working. I can't
yeah,
move." So
yeah,
whoever it is, I'm not meeting. But then later on, I think we met, and I think we had some open chat with
yeah,
regards to everything.
yeah.
And I think I'm glad of how you've grown since then. I think Zamsters and now where you are, I think going from junior CD to CD, I think it's huge. And I
You would
think
not have ever
account director,
expected that, right?
yeah, I mean, CD I can believe, but account director, I'm like, what the hell? What is happening now? What are you having? What's the super drug that you have? So,
Yeah,
but super proud and I think really happy that you're having a good career. I think that's very important for us at Virality too. I would always say, right, that if someone is leaving here, they should make their absence felt to us because they should have been so good. And when they go to some other place, they should definitely add value. Same
yeah,
concept.
yeah.
Like how we try and add to our clients. I think guys who leave us goes elsewhere should have the same impact. And I think I'm really glad that you're on a path where you're sort of doing that and wish you all the success on a professional front.
Absolutely.
And we may cross paths, and I'd like to give a shot at kicking your ass as a company to company. You know, that's how competitive I am.
I
But
think that would be
on
fucking
a personal level,
amazing. I think that would be fucking amazing. Like Tesla's opened in Bangalore. We were thinking of doing a pitch. I'm 100% sure you guys also got thinking from your end. So imagine both of us show up at the Tesla door. I think that would be great. Like that would just go to show how far we have come as individuals.
yeah, and I'm sure we won't be the only ones, so it'll be good fun.
We'll have Densu Web Chutney there. We probably have Happy McGarry Bhavan and all those buggers in the corner. But I'm sure what we will present to those Tesla guys is going to be miles different from what the traditionalists come forward with, because I think I can speak very openly about this. I did a pitch to Hindustan Pencils, the guys who own Natraj, Apsara, and all of those guys, and that was the best pitch of my life that I've done, according to me. Right, the pitch that I made I was working till 4 the previous evening, and the pitch was at 12 in the morning. So three, like barely any sleep and giving the pitch. And I still remember at the end of it, the marketing lady was like, their agency was Ogilvy, right? The digital agency was Ogilvy. They're like, this is the kind of shit we expect Ogilvy to give us, not you guys. So that is the day that is the day I felt proud. Like I felt like, dude, I'm in a cabin right now with the guys who made Nataraj pencil, the guys who have fucking made Nataraj pencil, and I'm pitching to them, right? So
The pencil I used to use in school.
the pencil, like
Used to
everyone,
play
every
pencil
90s
fight
kid,
with.
yeah, every 90s kids used to play pencil fight with, right? Put a less rubber band in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
back so it doesn't slip out and shit. So yeah, that was the day that was the day I realized that, like what we offer is a cut apart from the traditional. Of course, Ogilvy has the best PR, and at any point of time, any ad they make will be featured on 20 platforms and they'll get awards and shit. But in terms of the value and the way we look at the industry and the way we look at things, I think is cut apart from what the traditionalists are looking at.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, no doubt about it.
So that's something that
I've seen that too.
yeah, I very strongly believe in that. So now coming to, I think the last quarter of our segment, because this is something that I wanted to discuss with you very closely, and this is what I started our podcast with as well. I'll give a little 2-minute insight of the thoughts that I'm having, and then you can take it away from there. So my thinking is that the traditional roles of copywriter, designer, and digital marketer, or the media buyer, right? You're the main guy who will do the ads and campaigns and development and stuff like that. I believe that till 2018, these roles made sense. But now, in my mind, I feel a copywriter and a graphic designer should know how the ads and ad spaces work. Not that they are the experts in media buying, but they should know my ad will show up here, my creative will show up here, it needs to look like this, my creative needs to be so many pixels. Like even today, I'm dealing with designers. Like the reason I stopped doing graphic design job is because I realized there's no growth there in India. Like I will not grow. I will be the one who will be coming the first to the office and leaving the last. So that's why I stopped doing graphic design professionally, right? And I realized that today there is no agency out there, at least in my agency, where there's no trickle down effect of people on top who are talking about roles becoming dissolved. But according to me, who is an account director leading two client servicing or two account managers and their teams and their copywriting teams, whenever I sit with the team and we do a brainstorm, I always ask my designer to tell my copywriter what he should be writing, because the designs will look like that. I always tell my writer to ask the digital marketer what the CTA should be. I always tell my digital marketer to tell my copywriter, bro, I tell my digital marketer that, bro, you need to learn English. You need to learn copywriting. Because there will come a time when I don't want my copywriter to write these CTAs. I want you to do it. Save my copywriter the time of doing that bullshit. You do it. I will tell my client servicing or account manager, you take that fucking Photoshop template from the designer, because now all the client will say is you remove this logo, remove that logo, which you can also do. Let my designer work on the big art pieces. So I believe now that, yes, of course, there are these individual roles of copywriter whose job is to come up with the campaigns and the words, the designer whose job is to give a look and feel to that campaign, and the digital guy who will tell the designer and the copywriter what to create and how they will push it online, and the client servicing or the account manager who helps get the deliveries done, gets the brief from the client, and gets all of it to happen. I believe that these roles are no longer individual roles. Like I believe 2 years from now, a copywriter will be a client servicing person or an account manager. An account manager will come and say, boss, I can do the client management and I will give you copies, because I don't want anyone else to write, and I can give you the skills like that as well. Same way, I believe there will come a time when digital marketer will say, bro, I know Photoshop. You just make the art pieces and give me, I will make the graphics and I'll upload it. So this is one moral thing that I'm having. And the second thing that I'm having is this is internal, right? In terms of agency structure and agency roles. Second thing that I'm having is in terms of how you grow clients in the modern sense, right? Like in most agencies, as part of the scope of work or retainer, you will have 3 to 5 posts a week, right? That's the norm. I ask everyone a question. When you are personally browsing on your social media, how many ads do you interact with? Or how many ads do you literally stop and wait to read? They'll be like 1 in 40. I'm like, you're making 5 posts a week. All of them are right hooks. All of them are right hooks as per, how these people write. How many people do you think are looking at these posts? You're spending an entire day making 5 posts. Do you think people are spending more than 2 seconds looking at your posts? So this is another thought that I have. I believe that any agency today, like how March Tea or Ather does it, I know both these brands, but they do maybe one post in a month or 5 ads in a month. So what is your philosophy? Do you think just because there is another agency out there who might steal this client because they will say, I will do 5 posts, but I'm saying I can get the same done with 3 posts. Just for that sake, do you think agencies today should do 5 posts a week? Or do you think agencies today should take a backhand and say, you know what, dude, that's not how digital works. Digital does not reward you if you spam the digital space without getting any engagement. Even if you do 3 posts a week and get really good engagement on that, Instagram will see you as a content creator as opposed to doing 5 or 7 posts a week. So, what is your philosophy in terms of the internal agency structure and agency roles going forward, and agencies redoing their scope of work going forward? Two things that I want to ask.
So I think very long question, by the way. So
Yeah, take all the time that you need to answer this, because this is the main thing that I
now,
want to discuss with you.
I think agencies spend unnecessary time worrying about things that they shouldn't worry about. Whether you have to do 3 or 5 posts a week should be a non-event. You should spend as little bandwidth on that as much as possible, right? Because I just don't think it matters, to be honest, in the modern day digital ecosystem. I think what you need to so if you're going to lose a client because another agency is going to come and offer to do 2 more posts a week, and if you know that, and if you lost the client because of that, then you deserve to lose the client. It's simple, right? On the other hand, I think like if you are already in a situation where the relationship between your client and you is a relationship like a vendor, where I think it's more of like, hey, I'm paying you X, so you give me Y, and if the conversation is always on the X and the Y, then I think it's an account gone, or I think the business principle there isn't strong. The way you should approach anything is saying that you're hired for a specific job, you care about it, you're in the process together. I always say it's like going to the gym and getting yourself a trainer.
Yeah.
You can get a trainer, and then he will tell you everything that you need to do, but and he will also be there to assist you down the way. And in our case, I think we sort of take that load as well to an extent. A trainer would ask you to do 10 push-ups, and then you have to do it. As he wouldn't do it for you. But here in our case, I think we take up a little bit of that load too. So I think it's a relationship, it's a partnership. You should look at it from that standpoint, which means the goals of the people on the other end also become your goals. And I always say this often at times in the advertising world, you're servicing a brand, yes, but you're also servicing the brand manager on the other end.
Correct.
So it's very important for you to understand how he's thinking, what his vision is, who are the other people on the end, what do they want to do.
What is he
The more you
accountable
know,
for?
yeah, and more you know about that, it becomes easy for you to then align your team internally and your organization to achieve those goals. So the conversation on the deliverables and what you get at the end of the month for the amount you're paying, I think is a very transactional way of looking at it. And even the clients who spend time doing that are actually not keeping an eye on the market. You should spend all your time managing or figuring out. These are for lean organizations. I know in large corporations you have brand managers who are one among the 7-8 people, at least working on one particular brand, and everyone has KRAs and it's divided, and sometimes the job of the brand manager becomes to police and manage the agency,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. But those scenarios also arise, more than one would imagine. And I think the
That is
key
my
to
9 to
all of
5,
that.
dude. That is my 9 to 5.
So it is, right. It's a part and parcel of it. I do very less of that today. I used to do a lot of that a few years ago. My roles have transitioned in the organization. I'm keeping an eye on the market and doing a lot of things. But my principles, even when I was doing those, was simple: to get the client to and the brand to align on a singular vision. Because sometimes it so happens that the client looks at it a certain way, and the agencies always look at it a certain way, because
Yeah.
agency is a mixed bag of skills and emotions, right? So
Yeah.
it's everyone has their viewpoint on how it should be done. But once you understand the client completely as a servicing guy, then it's very easy for you to then chart out the vision and the goals, and basically just handhold both sides, the client and your own
internal
team,
team. Yeah.
to basically achieve those goals. It arises from awareness on what are the things that matter, because for some people, different things matter for different people, right? I think I've had opportunity to work with a lot of brands who are very obsessed with results. All they want at the end of the month is growth, 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 and it's very easy. So they don't care if you didn't wish them on their birthday, or if you didn't send them a gift because it was some occasion, but if you achieve those results, they will respect you
Got it.
for who you are. And I've also been in other scenarios where the expectations have been different and not just work based, but also to ensure that you're there, we're doing a good job. So then someone can. It happens a lot in larger, older organizations where somebody gets you in and they want to show that, hey, this is the agency that I got appointed, so it's doing really well, and hence that increases their credit internally. And there are a lot of guys in the market who wait for the agency to do something great, or rather their objective of having an agency is to ensure that you do great campaigns and win awards at the back of it.
Yeah.
So there are different kinds of brand managers will come across, and I think you have to figure everyone's always going to have some amount of self interest to look out for. May it be awards, may it be a scenario where the agency does really well, so that he or she can go internally and say, hey, my agency and I did a great job, so now
Yeah.
I need a hike, because it's part of their KRAs and
Or I
appraisal.
want to
So
increase their retainer and stuff like that.
yeah, that never happens, let's face it. But it does happen. I think with some clients they do acknowledge it, but in general, I think in our country, no one wants to spend. So once it's decided, it's mentally registered that I'm paying this agency X, then they don't want it to be X plus one regardless of the
Yeah.
scenario. So that's sort of how it's how the Indian ecosystem at least is. But there are plenty of good guys out there who sort of understand what an agency brings to the table, who respect an agency, who respect people at the other end. I think the key is to always stay true to who you are as an organization, and always act and behave in that way. And it depends from organization to organization. I think as a lead, or the person who directly is responsible for the DNA that my company has, I feel I have certain values and principles, and the team aligns to it, and as a result of which we are able to work together and achieve, or rather do things a certain way. And it's not often that it's not always that you will find people that believe in you, and that would want necessarily agree with the way you're doing things, and both ways, right, on the client side
Internal and
and
external.
within
Yeah.
your team. And I think you have to navigate through that, and to each their own. The strategy, I think I've been very deeply inspired by the way Manchester United was run by Sir Alex, and I've
Fergie
just
time.
been a student. Yeah, I've been such a student of him, not just as a fan, but just been reading his books, his take on leadership and management, and I think it's fascinating. And I think being someone who grew up playing football so much, watching a team have so much success, and then reading the mindset of someone who basically held that position for like 26 years and did things a certain way. And I think there's this great quote from him, with regards to management. He says, you have to make decisions that aren't popular, but you're right.
Correct.
And I think a lot of that, the culture, the DNA, how the agency behaves is riddled with those kind of scenarios, where you're going to have to make those kind of decisions and see through it. Like Fergie said, I think I can do that. So I think that's really helped in terms of setting a principle in terms of the way we work. I still remember when we were working together, we were a small bunch of people, I think 4 members or something. I still remember early days, and we were I think we're just about profitable. I think our profitability was like 3-4%. Okay, which is shit, but it is profitability at the end of the day.
It's plus.
And a client was, it's plus, right? And the client was pushing our buttons. And I remember it was really difficult to work with that one client, because he didn't have, I think he was clear that I'm going to get this agency, pay them, but I'm going to make them do extra work, and I'm going to make
them work for their money.
Yeah, and also sort of didn't, and I think he had bad experiences, which is the worst, right? When someone's had a bad experience, and you
agency.
go in as the next, you go in as the agency to do the job that they couldn't do, and there's so much suspicion, and they don't trust you, and everything is so transactional. They're so guarded and defensive. It's such a bad environment to be in. But you end up in those kind of scenarios, and you can't do anything about it but to just react and figure if you can, swim against the tide and change and make them open up a little. But that kind of scenario also plays out, and it's so difficult in navigating those. And through all of that, I think you need to have strong sets of values in going through those. And when that scenario happened to us, when we were working together and the client was being so pushy, I still remember I sat across the table, and in a minute I said, let's just end this. It's fine. And he didn't expect it. He was shocked, and he didn't want to end it suddenly, because he was very measured in the way he spent.
You called his bluff, basically.
No, I just feel sometimes I don't know. I think our generation knows when it's going to be difficult to work with people. Also, I was younger, and I think I was a little idealistic in the way I think the world should, the way I thought the world would work, and I think it wasn't right. And if the minute we had difficulty in dealing with a client, I think back then the immediate reflex was to say, okay, maybe we can't do this, and let this go. And then I realized as I grew older that if you're going to drop a client every single time there's a disagreement, and if you're not able to work through it, and it's also a function of being a small organization, right? Sometimes you really need the clients to stay alive, and stay afloat, and to consistently keep doing good work. So I was in that frame of mind, I think, and I didn't realize it. And I think it's only actually just before COVID that I figured, okay, uh, the approach to this entire piece needs to be different.
Yeah.
You need to have a brand and identity for your organization, and a brand isn't just a logo or the colors. And it's about what it means, what it stands, and culture stems from top. A great brand strategist once said to me, "A brand is always a reflection of its promoters," and it's
Absolutely.
so true.
Absolutely, man.
And it's so true, right? And in terms of how I believe or how I behave is how the organization will turn out to be. So
Absolutely.
it is very important to streamline that thought. And I spent significant time probably pre-COVID and little bit post lockdown in terms of wanting to rather designing what I wanted it to be, because the way we started off this organization, and even when you were there, it was a hustle. It was, I was in a company, I was leaving them, I remember, on the 31st, and on the 1st we were in Virality.
Did they still pay you?
The
That company
investment.
that owed you, I think, a couple of
No,
lakhs.
yeah, they paid for my surgery, and I think eventually they just helped me out when I was in distress. So
They cleared it like that.
grateful to them, because I couldn't have for sure afforded the money for the surgery, for my knee. Anyway, that got done, and really grateful. But yeah, I think it was a very difficult time. So I didn't have that money. We didn't have money. I remember we were dependent on uh, uh, clients paying us for me to be able to pay salary to all of you guys who were there.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of times I was late on it, and which is my bad. But early days, I was figuring it out too.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
it
I
was
ever had a
difficult.
salary problem with you.
Yeah, I think we were clear from the go, and I don't think you and I are the kind of people who work for the money. I mean, yes, we
Yeah.
need the money to keep us,
We work to grow.
to sort of, yeah, to feed ourselves, but we are in it because we absolutely love what we do, and I think
Yeah.
we want to be the best at
Yeah.
whatever it is that we do, and I think the mindset has been very clear from day one.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's
but
why we
yeah,
have
those are the
stayed
days.
connected, even though we have been in different
Sure.
agencies now. I think it's because I know you love what you do, and I know I love what I do, and I think you know I love what I do as well. Because otherwise, I would have probably not stuck with this. And I kind of knew that from our first interaction together itself. Like our conversations were never ki boss creative banana. It's more like, what is the philosophy? Like, what are we aiming to do? What do we want to change? What is the new things that we want to bring to this space, right? I mean, even if you remember, I won't take the client's name. Our first client together, which was the five-a-side football turf club in Indranagar. Our philosophy was always to make that like the feeling. What is the feeling we're working on, right? Every footballer in that
Yeah.
area would want to come there because they know it's a place that celebrates the sport, and it's not just a venue like accelerate where you go and pay money, right?
Right.
And book a court. So I think that is something we've always had, like the love for the work, right? Like stay till 9 and get that creative done. And like, you remember that one campaign we ran, right? The women of football, where we got all those women. I still remember that campaign. We got all those women footballers, and we made an Aditi Mittal. I think she commented saying, "Awesome!" Right? Remember that, right? So I still remember that because I fucking loved doing that, right? So I completely connect with what you're saying in terms of falling in love or loving what you do, because I believe it's only when you love advertising that. See, advertising is 90% things you don't, according to me, 90% things that you don't like, but you're good at and you have to get it done. And 3% things that you love and you celebrate, according to me, right? Like I hate being the delivery person in terms of following up. Where is it? When can we do it? Follow. I hate doing that because I believe since that guilt of leaving Virality and stuff like that, I've always been accountable for my own shit in terms of the moment I send an email, I've put in the WhatsApp group that guys, I've sent the mail. Let's touch base at 6. Anything that happens, I update, right? Even if it's something like, dude, I'm gonna take the next hour off because I'm doing something. I will update, and I believe this update comes. This thing comes from people having ownership for their shit, right? Like designers taking ownership for their design. So what internal policy I started doing, right? I would always tell my team Don't send anything to me. Put it in the group. I want everyone to see what you're doing. That way, this fucker will think thrice before putting up a design because he knows everyone's looking at what's going on right now. So even for me, like the reason I think I've been under so much conflict is because I have not trained in management, and you and I are both self-taught. Like we've learned everything from YouTube videos and books. So there's no one who will teach you hardcore management in terms of what you mentioned about Alex Ferguson, right? I know this is not, no one's going to like me for it, but this is the thing I have to do. I know no one's going to like it if I tell my designers, guys, you all have to cock up and come on a 10 o'clock JSR call. No one's going to like it, but they come, the day starts, before 6 o'clock, everyone's work is done. And I ask them, isn't the thing that you want in life right now is to go home on time? Am I not getting that done for you? So isn't this process working? So I think that's how I got pushed into the account direction role, because I was stepping out from doing mainline creative thinking into more brand growth, brand strategy, internal process. Is this brand business paying us enough in our retainer for me to assign so many designers and take on so many print jobs? And one of the things that I became really good at is dealing with clients in terms of explaining a concept to them and making sure they buy the concept. And whenever they have a feedback, telling them why this feedback doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, if it's something like my logo placement has to be in top right because it's a brand philosophy, obviously I will not fight that. But when it's something like, can you try a blue background instead? I'm like, is that blue background going to really work? Let's think. Like, let me give you an idea. You're walking down the aisle and you see a black background versus a blue background. You think it's really going to make a difference? So very few clients will be like, yeah, I think the blue will work better. I'll show them both. And I'll be like, I ran it internally. My team didn't fucking make a difference. It didn't make a difference to my team. So this way, I'm very open and transparent with my clients, and the account managers who work under me, I'm teaching them also to be very transparent with the clients. Like never hide to them that we can't get a creative done today. If it's 4 o'clock and you know we can't get a creative done, call them up, tell them I can't get it done today. They will respect you more, is what I feel. Right. So this is the moral ambiguity, or the morals versus running a business thing that I'm dealing with. Like I want people who work with me to love what I do as much as I love it. And at the same time, I want them to know that this is a fucking job. It is a job at the end of the day. So, and I think you answered that also very beautifully. It's a trickle down effect, right? It's the managers who show the younglings or the foundlings how they should work. Like I hate organizations where there is a unspoken thing among people that all 8 hours you have to be on your screen doing something. I'm like, why? Spend 2 hours, watch The Mandalorian in office if you've got work done. Like you watch The Mandalorian and you'll give me 10 creative concepts. I know it. Like you will tell me, can we do something with young Yoda, or can I do something with Mando? That is what I want my workspace to be like, right? It's not you come at 10 and start working immediately. You come at 10, fucking make yourself a coffee, make the team a coffee, or tell everyone, guys, today I want to do a drum session for all of you to show you what it's like. So that is what I'm trying to build internally for my organization and my team, and tell them that you will only love this job if you are truthful about why you're in it. So that's where I am with my philosophy and mindset as a manager or a director, if I may.
Nice. It's certainly evolved. And whatever you're reading and consuming is working. So yeah, keep doing more.
I know what you're saying. It has a lot to do with the fact that I'm staying away from psychedelics and using that as a way to find my answers.
Escape.
Yeah, as an escape. Exactly. So there's no more escape for me. It's like I am in the middle of shit every day. So I have to clean the shit off my face, right? And when you're cleaning the shit off your face, you're like, why? How can I avoid this shit every day? So that's pretty much been my story. And I'm so happy that we got to have this podcast today. It was something that Certainly. I've been looking forward to for a long time, without impeding on your bandwidth and my bandwidth as well. So as we come to a close, Sanand, we have been at this for, I think, an hour now. Yeah, just an hour we've touched. What I usually do as a closing segment with my audience and whoever joins is I do like a rapid fire. Now this rapid fire is a bunch of questions that have to do with life, spirituality, the industry, and also like regular day-to-day stuff that go on around outside. So are you ready?
Sure.
Are you ready? So it's going to be a 1 minute long rapid fire. You can take like at max 5 seconds per question. It's got a bunch of questions and we stop exactly. So it's 14:49. I'm guessing it's 14:49, 30 seconds. As soon as it's 14:51, we stop. Right?
Right.
Are you ready?
Done. Yep.
Sanand M. Warrior, are you ready for the Anvay Pramanik early night show rapid fire question?
Rapid fire. Yes.
All right.
Bring it
Question
on.
one. Question one. If you didn't have to work for money, what would you want your day job to be?
Oh, just play football, I guess.
As a coach or as a player?
Either. I take both. I tried both. I think I'm better off as a coach than a player, at least to the standards I would like. So maybe that coach.
So your day job would become trying to build a football team.
Yeah, coaching a team, building a club. Building a club again becomes a business. So actually, I don't know. I think coaching would be nice. It's a nice give something back to the game that gave me out. So yeah.
On a grassroots level, I know this is extending a little bit, but on a grassroots level
Yeah.
or like professional level?
But I think start at the grassroots and then figure if we can build a good structure. I think I'm a problem solver, so I pick a problem of grassroots and then figure if I can build it all the way
Scale
up
it.
and then make that a model for future. For everybody who wants to has aspirations and dreams of becoming a player.
That's fucking insane.
Maybe that.
That's fucking insane. I really like that. Are you a red sauce pasta guy or a white sauce pasta guy?
I'm actually not a pasta guy, but if I have to, then I probably white sauce.
If a red sauce steak or a white sauce steak?
Oh, red.
Nice.
Red.
Do you believe red sauce? Got it. Do you believe morals are important? Yes or no?
Yes.
Would you want to marry for companionship or marry because you want to start a family?
Companionship.
Nice. Superman or Goku? Who would win in a fight according to you and why?
Fucking hell, this is hard. Man, this is really hard because I like them both and I know what works for both. Oh man, if you can bring some scenarios and I'll pick Goku because
I'll show you. I'll tell you two scenarios. Okay, two clauses.
Okay,
Goku can blow up the sun, and Goku is only till Super Saiyan 3. So GT and Super is not counted. And Superman is this is Man of Steel Superman. Your Henry Cavill Superman.
Yeah, the thing is, both of them are great, nice guys.
Yes.
Right. So that's the dilemma. You don't know who's going to be the radical one and do something. You've never seen Goku do that. I've seen Superman do that, so I might just go with Superman.
Got it. So you were saying like Superman would go berserk and probably put his hand through Goku or something like that. Like
yeah, I think, but Goku can stop that. It's going to be interesting, man. I don't know. I just put my money. Like I put my money on McGregor today and he lost. So I'm not really doing that well. So I'll go with Cavill for now.
Got it. Your top two places, if you had a choice to live abroad, city and country.
I think England, London or Manchester.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, Manchester.
Obvious. So it would only be in England. Like you wouldn't look at another country.
Maybe somewhere in an island nation. I actually like Phuket. Honestly, I've been there for work, lived there for a short period of periods in distributed periods in the year. I like that place. It's like Kerala, but it's very different. It's cleaner. That's how I feel. But yeah, or I could even go to Kerala. I don't mind. Actually, no, I can't. I'll do Phuket.
Okay, so Phuket and Manchester.
Yeah.
If you had a crystal ball that could show you your future, would you like to see it?
No.
Define friendship in one sentence.
People who you can trust and grow with.
Nice. Say you had 7 days to live. As soon as this podcast ended, you had 7 into 24 hours left to live. Would you continue doing and living the same way, or would you radically change a few things?
I would do everything that I intended to do much faster, and then figure how much time I have left for escapes or indulgences. The
indulgences, got it. When was the last time you had a moment where you cried your ass out, like literally broke down and fucking cried?
I think when I watched Marley and Me and the ending of the film, I think maybe that. Because otherwise, I think the time before that probably was when I was 16, 17. I can't even remember. I probably messed up at home and got hit by my dad. So maybe that time. But yeah, otherwise, no.
So this was like last was 18, I'm guessing. 18, 19.
Yeah. I think 2010 somewhere. Yeah. So probably 18. Yeah.
Awesome. So Sanand, that brings us to the end of our rapid fire questions. I told you it'd be a mix of all kinds of shit, right?
Like, yeah, it was fun. It was the most fun rapid fire I've ever had.
I'm glad. Like I wanted to mix it up, like ask you like a deep question to start off with and make you think like, is it going to be all deep? And suddenly ask you next, Superman or Goku, who's going to win?
That was hard. That was easily the toughest question. I still don't know the answer.
So,
Just
so
took a punt
you know
with
how
yeah.
I see it? I see it as Goku can only win if he has the brains to Kamehameha or solar flare the sun because he can
Dude,
wish
a
he
kryptonite. He
or
just pull a kryptonite out
or
of
if he
somewhere.
gets
Yeah,
like
that's,
or if he like instant transmissions to Krypton and gets a piece of kryptonite. It's another scenario, yeah. So I was thinking
fuck
like
yes.
Goku would only be able to win in those situations where he blows up the sun and he wishes it back using
Yeah,
Dragon Ball.
but he's too nice. He's not going to kill him. You
He's
know
too
him.
nice, yeah. He might not kill him. He'd be like, you go and train harder and come back. Right?
Yeah, and Man of Steel crossed that line. So, he's already been there, done that. You never know.
He's
So,
already
yeah,
killed. So I think that's the only thing that gives Superman an advantage because Goku is not killed yet. But I think
definitely.
if pushed, Goku might. You never know. If he snaps, he might. I don't know.
Possible.
Awesome, Sanand. Thank you so much for coming for season 2, episode 5. Thank you for giving me your time. And I can say for a fact that I know we're going to do another podcast at least in the next 2-3 months. It's going to be
For sure.
one topic which we are going to break down very extensively. I think I've already got a few ideas formulating in
Looking
my
forward to
head.
it.
Sorry?
Right. I'm quite sure
Yeah.
we'll go deeper, have deeper conversations.
Yeah, we're gonna have because we've established that our baseline. It's not gonna be on a surface level.
Right.
We know we're gonna take it deeper and deeper. And maybe next time we'll do a 2-part podcast where we'll record 1 hour, and I'll upload it as a 2-part podcast.
No,
I think we could do
works.
something like that.
Great.
So thank you,
Works.
Scam. Any final thoughts from your
Yeah.
end with regards to what it felt like being here, and for people who are watching, like if you want to give me a shout out or anything like that?
Yeah, I think just the way you mentioned, I don't know if you got that in the recording of in the prelude, but whenever we speak, it's like we just left it off yesterday and just picked it up. So it was just that. I think you have an knack for creating conversations. I've always told you that. So I think you will sort of. I'm excited to see how you grow this and how long you do this and while you get on the show. So I'm going to be rooting for you there behind the scenes.
That's fucking amazing, and I can promise you something that. So one of the things that I want to do with this is I want to create like panel discussions between experts, like a
Nice.
roundtable kind of thing.
Nice.
Because I believe that one thing I'm good at, like how you said, creating space for people to speak. So creating like a non-Arnab Goswami kind of a panel discussion with people who really want to speak is something I want to do. Like so, and I'm sure for a fact that one day we will have an advertising cross-table conference. Probably we'll get Gary Vee and Seth Godin and all on it. And I'm sure we will have a fantastic time. Like that's how big I'm dreaming, right? Like Gary Vee, Seth Godin, right? So you, me, Karan, Adi, and all the people we have worked with, and those people, I think it'd be a fantastic fucking podcast if we ever get together.
No doubt about it. No doubt.
Thank you, Sanand, and that's all from my end. Bye. Have a fucking awesome day ahead.
You too. Hopefully, you do this very soon.